What's up, everybody? It's Matt, Comic Quarter 410 here. I was tagged by my good buddy Tom, Hippies Collectibles, to show 20 of my favorite comic book covers. And I believe this tag was started by Seeking Near Mint Comics, so big thank you to both of them. I know the tag's been going on for a while, and I'm not sure who was tagged, so I'm not going to tag anybody in particular. But of course, if you watch this and you want to make a video, please feel free to do so. I can't say these are my absolute 20 favorite covers of all time, but they're among them, and they're the ones that were springing to mind while I was going through my collection, pulling out books. So these are 20 of my all-time favorites, and I think I might have went a couple over, so I apologize. But to get started, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous painted cover to Spectacular Spider-Man Magazine number 2. These magazines came out in 1968. They only did 2 of them, but they both had these beautiful painted covers by the great John Romita Sr. And in particularly, this gorgeous cover to number 2 always had me asking, why aren't we seeing more painted covers from Romita Sr.? Look at that beauty. One of my favorite Spider-Man covers ever. Really love that book. I'm a big fan of Neal Adams. He's another one of my favorite artists. I'm a big fan of the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu Marvel magazines. They were a big part of my childhood. And I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. This is my all-time favorite Bruce Lee cover for any comic or magazine. And I was happy enough to get this signed 4 years ago. Lucky enough, I should say, and happy to get this signed by Neal Adams 4 years ago. And he really got to talking about Bruce with me for like 10 minutes. And he took out a fine point Sharpie and really took his time and put a nice looking signature on there, which, nothing for nothing, I feel like a lot of times he doesn't take his time with the signature as much. It's a really sharp, nice looking Neal Adams signature on a book that I love, so very happy to have that. This is probably my favorite Morbius cover of all time, and it's a cover that I feel like doesn't get mentioned too often. And with Halloween coming up, I decided to break out this gory, creepy classic Vampire Tales Annual #1 cover by the great Bob Larkin. He painted this classic gory masterpiece. I love it. Always thought it was a little frightening as a kid, especially for a Marvel mag. Really dig that one. Had a tough time cutting it down to 20 books, and I probably could have done a whole video of my 20 favorite EC covers, I'm sure. But I pulled out a few. 2 of my favorite EC artists and artists of all time here. This is Weird Science 13. Gorgeous Wally Wood cover. One of my favorites just because the layout and especially the fine detail of his line work on this cover. It holds up to anything that comes out today. It is a beauty. Always love that cover. But this, as many of you know, is probably my all-time favorite Wally Wood cover. This is Weird Science number 16. And I just love, again, the layout, the kids, the dog scared behind the rock, the UFO, and of course the alien. And this alien design by Wally Wood affected many things in pop culture in terms of Martians and aliens afterwards. The Mars Attacks aliens were directly based on this design, and The Simpsons, their aliens were influenced by this design. It's just timeless and a gorgeous cover. One of my other favorite EC artists is the late great Jack Davis, and I've always loved this cover. He's a big influence on a lot of other artists. You can really see in this cover the influence on Bernie Wrightson's artwork. It's always been one of my favorites, Tales from the Crypt 37. And Jack was he was a jack of all trades. He could draw any type, humor covers for Mad, military covers, horror. He could do it all. You don't see that as often nowadays. Speaking of Jack Davis, another one of my all-time favorite covers, Two-Fisted Tales number 30. This was voted by the contributors to Overstreet Price Guide a couple years ago as the greatest military comic cover ever done, and I agree. Just an amazing classic by Jack Davis. Their covers were ages ahead of the time. And, of course, another one of my favorite artists, the great Frank Frazetta. This is the only solo cover he did for EC to Weird Science Fantasy 29. Definitely one of my all-time favorite covers. This was originally a Buck Rogers cover, and the publisher didn't use it. And all he did was take the helmet off Buck, make him have blonde hair, change. He had originally like a laser rifle in his hand that he was smashing the caveman with. So he just changed it to one of the caveman's clubs, and you have one of the greatest covers ever published that some moron turned down for a Buck Rogers cover. So absolutely love having those books in my collection. Next up, this is one of these covers that just kind of grabbed me as a kid, and I really wanted to read this book, and I didn't get to for many years. This is Batman 156. It has this classic Sheldon Maldorf cover with Robin Dies at Dawn. It was relived, or revisited, I should say, decades later by Grant Morrison, but great story in there as well. Big shout out to Dr. Von Schill. I saw his tag. It was pretty much all Gil Kane covers, as most of us knew it would be. But yeah, Gil Kane's output in the Bronze Age was second to none. So many amazing covers. And this may be my favorite Gil Kane cover ever, Amazing Spider-Man 129. I'm a big Punisher fan, and this cover is just timeless. It's been swiped and homaged more times than I can count. The yellow background, the red lettering, the perfect layout. Gil Kane's a genius, and I think, you know, it is the first appearance of the Punisher, but I think this classic cover is a big part of why this book's always been so popular and sought after. Just a great cover. Lost another one of my all-time favorites this past year, the great Bernie Wrightson. I had the pleasure of meeting him. He's another one I could have pulled out 20 covers, you know, but his Swamp Thing work was the most influential stuff he did on me, at least, and it was the first stuff of his I encountered as a kid. Love these covers. That's my number 3. Got Bernie to sign that. This is one of my favorite Swamp Thing covers Bernie did. Just kind of harkens back to a Frankenstein type scenario with the villagers, you know, pitchforks, torches, and just a great layout and well executed cover. I got Bernie to sign that too. And this cover, and especially I mentioned this not too long ago too, the layout with the half solid, or I guess about a third or a quarter solid cover with the big logo. That was an EC thing, and the work of Bernie Wrightson was influenced by those EC guys so heavily. They kind of did this layout on purpose, and I think this is one of Bernie's Swamp Thing covers that screams EC the most. The design of that robot monster. Love that cover. Lost a great one. He was the master of horror as far as comics are concerned. But another one of my all-time favorites, as you know, is Jim Steranko. Could have pulled some of his Cap covers too, but his Nick Fury art, the layouts are just unlike anybody else's. Psychedelic, they scream 60s, they scream early 70s. I mean, always loved this one. Nick Fury, number 5. Got Steranko to sign that for me. And this is probably my favorite Nick Fury cover that Steranko did. Again, just a classic layout that's been ripped off, swiped, and homaged so many times because it's so great. Beautiful cover. And another one that got me as a kid, this one with the Earth blowing up, but I love the retro space gear, the layout, and there might not be anyone better at layouts than Steranko. His layouts are amazing, but always loved his work. His run on that series is just legendary. Let's show this first. I have this out. This is another one of my favorite artists, Richard Corbin. He did this. This is the second printing to Turtles number 2. And he did this gorgeous painted wraparound of the Turtles. And he's always been one of my favorites. Does a lot of great horror stuff. But to see him do the Turtles in a painted wraparound, that's just gorgeous. very, very underrated artist anymore, is Richard Corbin. My favorite Mike Zeck cover ever is probably this Punisher miniseries number 3 cover that's airbrushed by Philip Zimmelman. Just amazing, amazing stuff. I had this poster as a kid. I think I knew Fool Killer said he did too, but just one of the best Punisher covers and one of Zeck's best covers ever. I don't know why he didn't do more stuff with Zimmelman. They worked well together. This is a book that just came out, one of my favorite covers in a year or two of anything that's come out. Future Quest, they got Steve Rude working on Space Ghost again, and talk about a painted beauty. This great, great cover here was painted by the dude Steve Rude. So I threw that in there. One of my favorites of the year for sure. Here's another book you don't see people talk about or show too much, but really nice Black Widow cover by John Cassidy. And I like the background. I feel like it was influenced by Steranko. Just a great, great cover. Got John Cassidy to sign that a couple years ago. One of the biggest artists in the industry when I was collecting as a kid was Todd McFarlane. He was an all-out rock star. He was a big influence on my collecting in middle school. And still love his work. This is probably McFarlane's best Amazing Spider-Man cover to me, or my favorite. Always love that one. Think it's a great, great cover. And this is probably my favorite McFarlane cover of all time. Hulk 340. Again, another cover that's been swiped for variants countless times because it's awesome. Glad to have a nice high-grade copy of this. This was another poster I had in my room as a kid. So, love that book. And speaking of Hulk and Wolverine, again, it was tough to narrow down my favorite Herb Trimpe cover because his G.I. Joe work, his Shogun Warriors work, his Godzilla work was so important to me as a kid. But again, I think this amazing Herb Trimpe cover, again with red and yellow, something about that grabs the eye, but this cover is a big reason why this book has always been one of the most sought after Bronze Age books. And of course it is the first appearance of Wolverine, but the cover is legendary and iconic, and there's no arguing that. One of the best covers Marvel's ever had. Love that book. Very happy to have it in my collection. Back to Neal Adams. This is one of my favorite Neal Adams covers ever. Kind of ironic that he did this in the modern age with all his great Batman work that I love. This is probably my favorite Batman or Joker cover he did. Was lucky enough to get him to sign that. So very happy to have that as well. Always liked that cover. And could not get a copy of that variant when it first came out. So last but not least, this is one of my favorite variants that DC's ever put out. It was only 1 in 10, but just a great, great cover. This is Ethan Van Sciver's 1 in 10 variant to Green Lantern number 9 with Batman as a Green Lantern. Blew my mind when I saw it. I think it was only $5 or $10 because it was a 1 in 10, and again, I was lucky enough to meet Ethan Van Sciver and get him to sign this book. So that is a great, great cover that I think holds up very well. But thank you again to Seeking Near Mint Comics for starting the tag, and especially to Hippies Collectibles for tagging me. I appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Take care of yourselves and enjoy your comics.